a friend tomorrow. As one of the principles of international relations is that there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only interests are permanent. So that's one of the rivalries I met on the ground. The second is personal because once I came to Ahmadu Bello University to teach, incidentally I was offered a position in the University of Ife. I could have gone there, but there are some personal reasons why I had to go to APU, which is a story for another time. I started the program in international studies. It's still there. But if it became a Department of International Relations, I didn't succeed in getting a Department of International Relations in ABU. It was still part of political science, but you can get a degree in international studies. And I think we're one of the first undergraduate degree program in the Commonwealth for international studies. So that was the rivalry between me and G.P. Eloko, may he rest in peace. And I met the rivalry between him and Adadam Eleko on the ground, which I refused to be part of. Now, talking of Professor F.S. Northridge, he also introduced me to later on I found out, the tension between theory and reality in foreign policy. The second place where I gave a lecture after being minister was at Ahmadu Bello University. It was almost like what do you call this, the inaugural lecture. And one of my students there said, Minister, tell me what is your position on Western Sahara? And I said, at that time, the Nigerian government has not decided to recognize Western Sahara. We eventually did, but there was a debate. Now, there were diplomats and ambassadors in the audience taking notes, everything I said. So I said to the student, I said, well, on the one hand, there are these factors for recognition. On the other hand, and then she said, but that's not what you used to teach us when you were a professor here. You only had one hand. And I remember that Professor F.S. Northridge said, there's always a tension between theory and reality. In other words, that the view of the road changes when you move from being in the passenger seat to the driver's seat. When you move from the passenger seat to, and that's why the title of my first book was second book, but that one was after I became minister, Theory and Reality in Foreign Policy Making. There's always a tension between principles and interests. You don't abandon the one for the other, but you have to be conscious of that tension. And it's in that book that I mentioned Professor Kayode Suremekun, who challenged me, said, you are the first Minister of Foreign Affairs to have had a relevant relevant academic background. You have people, in fact, I think one of my predecessors was a medical doctor, Professor Isaiah Aldrich, Minister of Foreign Affairs. So what are you going to leave as a legacy of theoretical foundations of Nigerian foreign policy? And then I replied, I don't remember what I said. But I think I vaguely said, you see, when you're a foreign minister, you are so busy with all the everyday things, receiving visitors, going with the head of state, advising the head of state, theoretical foundation tends to be something that is but I'm proud to say that what he said actually influenced that thinking influenced my own attitude to foreign policy making, where I then developed and sold to the President Buhari, the head of state Buhari, as concentric circles of foreign policy in Nigeria. I'm sure some of you have read about that. At the core must be Nigeria. Its prosperity, its security, and then relationship with the neighbors, and then Africa, then the non-aligned movement, and then the rest of the world. And since then, almost every successive foreign minister has tried to develop some kind of theoretical concept of foreign, something like concept of medial powers, Abolaji Akinyemi, who was my running mate, by the way. You know why? Because I took over from him as the Director General of the Institute of International Affairs, and he took over from me as Minister of Foreign Affairs. The only thing he didn't do is to follow me to the United Nations. No. Then you had economic diplomacy. Then you had citizen diplomacy. And then we have, right now, diplomacy with no name.
Just diplomacy. Smart diplomacy.
Because it's not realized that there's a difference between, and I'm speaking now as an academic, I warned you, there's a difference between foreign policy and foreign relations. Yes. Foreign policy is to guide foreign relations. You have to have some, who are you? What is your own definition of yourself? How do you see the world? You know? But foreign relations is then follows from, to be guided by that policy. Also that other parts of the world want to know what you stand for in dealing with you. So foreign policy is not a luxury. I said this before President Buhari when we were launching a book written by him. He was sitting in the audience and said, it's not Dogon Turenchi, which in Hausa means just big grammar. It's fundamental to your self-definition and to how you want to be perceived by the rest of the world and what the principle with which we want to deal with the rest of the world. But foreign relations is just what you do. Neighboring countries visiting, you visiting others, dealing with consular issues. So it's not a luxury at all. Now, before I go on for my presentation, maybe I'll be an honorary member of the Alumni Association. Do I get a round of applause for that? Now, serious matters. And what I would like to do is, I have a paper, but I'm not going to read it. I will have it circulated. And what I would like is, at the end of my presentation, to have questions or interactive session. You can ask me anything at all. Anything at all, because I feel privileged. I was a Minister of Foreign Affairs at the age of 39. Yeah.
Not too long.
I turned 40 in the ministry. And then, unusually, I had spent as ambassador of Nigeria 10 years. 10 years. Nobody is likely to break that record. It was an unusual time. I had 5 heads of state at that time and 7 foreign ministers during my time. And then I served very few heads of state to serve both as ambassador to the United Nations and under Secretary General of the United Nations for 13 years. And I was made also appointed by Kofi Annan as the first non-Western head of the Department of Political Affairs of the UN. Before me, it's always the Western country. They think that's their preserve. And yes, and since so no African before me, and no African or Western and non-Western person after me has been allowed to hold that position because it's at the nerve center of the UN. So I'm saying this not to draw attention to my CV, but to make the point that to whom a lot is given, from them a lot is expected. So I'm prepared to give whatever it is you want from me today in terms of your questions about anything, world affairs, Nigeria, Africa, conflict resolution. But the topic that I thought I was giving was the major global changes and impact of Nigeria, Africa, and the world. And I want to briefly mention a few of them, and then some of the arguments, that three of them. First is that now we're in the age of growing unilateralism on the part of the big powers, particularly America under Donald Trump. And if you follow what is happening in recent times, it seems like a new Cold War is emerging between the Western countries on the one hand and Russia on the other, with China more likely leaning towards the Russians. We thought the Cold War was over. With the end of the Cold War in 1989, and the collapse of the then Soviet Union, and the emergence of the push for democratization, for human rights. Then we had 9/11. And then we are now not only talking about post-Cold War period, post-9/11, the terrorist attack on homeland, United States homeland. Second, a growing nativism and nationalism in the US and Europe. It's not just about America first. It's every country take their national interest as paramount. If you don't follow your own national interest and you're a leader, you should be shot, because that will be treason. So it's nothing new to say you put your country first. But it cannot be your country only. No nation can survive, however big and powerful, rich or poor, small or big, without relating with the others. But that, in a sense, international relations. Okay. But the dimension that America first is taking, the dimension that anti-immigration, anti-immigrant, anti-whatever, anti-what is not us and them in Europe, is a dangerous phenomenon. Third, then growing protectionism and trade war. Again, China, America, Europe. Terrorism, I've mentioned, which respects no borders. Terrorism respects no borders at all. That is why fighting them, we cannot respect borders. That's why we couldn't succeed in, or if we make progress in Boko attacking or defeating Boko Haram, except in the context of relations with our neighboring countries. Mali, you cannot defeat terrorism there unless there's unity among the countries of the region and the world. I will list among the major global changes and challenges: youth unemployment and alienation. We have recent images of African youth drowning in their thousands while sailing in rocket boats across the Mediterranean. Another major global change, or change with global dimensions, the dichotomy of Africa rising. And in many ways, Africa is rising. There is not a single military regime in Africa as we speak. The rate of growth generally for the African countries is among the highest in the developing world. Okay? The women and the youth are resources that are going to be very important and critical in the future. Because we have aging countries in Europe and Japan. We have young population on the one hand. Then on the other hand, you have the fact that, I should add on the positive, Africa is the richest continent by far in terms of resources, mineral resources, and other more physical resources. But our continent contains the poorest of the poor. There's a dichotomy. How do we address that? Then you have the emergence of new economic powers: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, BRICS. And the rise of the BRICS coincides with the erosion of the legitimacy of Western-dominated Bretton Woods institutions, in particular the IMF and the World Bank. In fact, some observers will argue that the center of world economic gravity is shifting away from North America and Europe and to the East Pacific region, and maybe a reimagined Africa. So I have three main arguments to present to you, and I hope that you may disagree, as long as it's not violent disagreement. Three only. First, that in an uncertain and dangerous world in which we are, characterized by growing unilateralism and nativism, especially in the US, the UK, and Europe, in terms of protectionism, in terms of the scourge of terrorism, what the world needs more now is more multilateralism and not less. What we need more? A rule-based system, rule-based international system, where the interests of the strong, the weak, the poor, and the rich are harmonized. As the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, after the 9/11, gave a commencement address, what we call convocation here, in 2004 at Harvard University, and it defined multilateralism as follows, and I want to quote: "It is in the interest of every country to have international rules and abide by them. And such a system can only work if in devising and applying the rules, the legitimate interests of all countries are accommodated and decisions are reached collectively. This is the essence of multilateralism and the founding principle of the United Nations. As a matter of fact, when President Babangida then came to the United Nations and visited, as I was ambassador, received him, we drafted his speech, and at that time there was the thought of a new world order. And we put in his speech that the new world order should be collectively defined, collectively designed, and collectively implemented. The emphasis was on collective. That's multilateralism. The second argument, that even though, if you agree with me, that what we need to deal with the crisis now that we have is more, not less unilateralism, nonetheless, there is a crisis in global governance. And in order for multilateralism to thrive, the major global institutions, particularly the UN, which is the symbol of universality and international cooperation, must be reformed as a matter of urgency. It has to move from theory to reality. Reform of the UN and of the Security Council, especially in the area of peace and security, so as to make the UN much more effective in addressing the new and old challenges. Third argument, we have to revive the non-aligned movement, which appears comatose, because maybe it's become more relevant now because of the new danger of a new Cold War. And the final argument, that to survive in this turbulent world, Africa needs an umbrella, homegrown umbrella, for which to shelter from the stresses and storms of this dangerous world. Africa must be united. It's like Kwame Nkrumah said many years ago, Africa must unite. Africa must unite. And Nigeria's leadership, supported by a coalition of the willing countries in Africa, is of critical importance. Not only because we say we are one out of every 5 Africans in Nigeria, but whenever Nigeria takes the lead, Africa tends to be headed somewhere. When we led, OAU was established. The Lagos Plan of Action was right here in Lagos. The NEPAD, all the African peer review mechanisms, only when we have a coalition of the willing and the Nigerian lead. So those are the arguments that I want to present to you. Now, charity begins at home, Nigerian foreign policy. I'm not going to go through this. As I said, I would circulate this paper, or request that it be circulated. But there are 2 things that I want to say, or 3. First, and I alluded to it, we don't seem to have a foreign policy, and we think we don't need one. It's a mistake. We have to articulate what is in our best national interest. The rest of the world is dealing with wants to know where we stand on the major issues of the time, and what we ourselves consider to be important. The second is about leadership. Now, we say we are the giants of Africa. What does that mean? Is that more ascriptive than earned? And leadership has to be earned continuously. We may have been leaders in the 60s and 70s, but no longer now. But I must tell you, I am a good friend of the president of Kagame of Rwanda. Because I was representing Nigeria in the Security Council in 1994 when genocide was taking place, and stood for them. And they recognized it by giving me the 3rd highest honor in their country and the highest for foreigners. And I saw him much later, and he said, you know what, Professor Gambari, Nigeria is missing in action in foreign affairs, and therefore forcing me to punch above my weight. Although I think he's enjoying it now. He's the current chairman of the African Union. But we have to continue to earn our leadership. And it is not by saying we are the leader, we have to continue to earn it. Thirdly, the instruments of our foreign policy, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is in a state of disrepair. You know, because excessive bureaucratization, the recruitment, promotion, and discipline gone haywire. We need a new foreign service commission tasked with the duty of producing and managing highly professional and properly motivated diplomats. We have to return professionalism to the ministry. There used to be a time where people like Oluwadeniji, Dove Edwin, you know, Jola Osho, B.A. Clark, the giants, Chief Simeon Adebo, that I sometimes even feel that stepping into the shoes of somebody like Chief Simeon Adebo, I'm going to succeed this man as ambassador of Nigeria to the UN. Those were the giants. We have to return, and you know why were they giants? They were professionals. We have to restore professionalism there. And only a separate Foreign Service Commission will be able to do that. Because right now, if you want to go to foreign ministry, you have to go to Nigeria Public Service Commission, all kinds of criteria, you know, which does not. The second is that the level of funding, you know, of our foreign service is dismal. Compared not to Western countries, to African countries, Egypt, South Africa. And the third, in my view, is that we must involve, foreign policy is not just about the diplomat. We have to involve the academics. We have to involve the minister. Has anybody heard recently of Nigeria Institute of International Affairs? Where is it? Who is the Director General? Anybody know? But that's before we used to know. Nobody know, because it was very active. Finally, Nigeria should return to the creativity, vision, and commitment which in the past the country has demonstrated in the creation of not only the OU and AU, but that ECOWAS. African peer review mechanism, new invention by the Africans, 37 members, to talk about good governance, political, economic, and corporate. There's the Continental Free Trade Area. The treaty was signed in Nigeria and Ghana.